So we are here on this Saturday morning to have a conversation, making of men conversation. This is number 3 in a series of conversations that we will be having through the end of the year. And we have tried to be very intentional to bring on people that can truly impact our community, be informative, be encouraging, give hope, share healing, share their story, have the courage to be vulnerable and transparent. And so today we have the possible first Black sheriff for Oklahoma County, Wayland Cubit, on with us today. And I've been watching Wayland over the last several weeks. He's been doing a lot of the debates with his opponent, and I've watched all of them. And I've went back to look at them again and again because I really wanted to hear from both candidates. I didn't want to make a decision based on my personal opinion and relationship with Wayland. I thought it was important that if I was going to be a voice in this community, that I try to be as objective as possible. And so I've watched those and done some research. And so today I asked Wayland to come on, and I asked him this. I sent a text to him this morning, and he'll tell you, let me tell you guys, he and I have not discussed anything that we're getting ready to have a conversation about. Matter of fact, I sent him a text this morning and I said, take off your politician hat. I said, and just be a father, just be a husband, just be a Black man that has felt the anxiety and the weight of being a Black man in America. And let's just talk. So before we get going, I'm gonna, one of my favorite videos, Wayland, I'm gonna put up before we get going to kind of set the tone for where we wanna go.
Black man, doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
Wayland, there is absolutely no way that anyone can watch and listen to that, particularly as a Black man, and it not move them. Before we get into that conversation, when you see that young brother singing, what goes through your mind?
Well, man, just like you said, there's a variety of different feelings and emotions in this time, right? And as a police officer for all of these years, I have to deal with all those different voices and those different emotions. Because I might go right in for a meeting with a kid like that, expressing that, and I might move the next half of the day might be with some other people that don't understand that cry. And so I have to be able to articulate in that room these expressions without running people in that room out of it. So I have to be well versed in articulating facts and emotion, right? Facts don't change. Emotions are all over the place, right? And so in some rooms, they don't understand the emotion. They just deal with what they believe is the facts, not another perspective of the facts. And so I have to always share perspective, no matter what we're in. That's the South Side, where it's mostly Hispanic. That's Northwest Side, where it's mostly white. And then there's my home on the East Side, where it's mostly Black. And then I also have to tell you, and I have to tell, and we'll get to that discussion, I have to tell you about these other perspectives that I have to balance in order to be a leader in the city, not just a leader on the east side. So those powerful song. And the way he does it too, man. The way he does it is powerful too. Right. So I get it. I have to, it's hard for me to get after I articulate what I get to other communities, to other voices, to other leaders, other decision makers.
Yeah. Let me start by saying this, and I think it's important that I share this story with everyone, how Wayland and I started working together, and how I did not keep to one of the 4 agreements that I have for myself, which one of them is to not make assumptions. And so I met Wayland years ago when he was started the FACT program, and I was doing some different things called Burgers and Books and some relationships with a restaurant. And I was taking burgers over to Northeast Center where he had the FACT program and sharing that with him. And they had a wonderful program that they were doing with young people. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I've always tried to be that guy to try to find people that we had some commonalities together that went together, right? And so Cubit and I have been years working and doing some of the same work, being intentional about working with Black boys and trying to interrupt that mass incarceration machine and try to plant seeds of hope in these young African American boys, because we understood that that's how we break chains of generational poverty. So with that being said, I expected Wayland Cubit to continue to reach out to me because of Making of Men and the work that I was doing in the community. And I would never hear from Wayland, but I would see him at the Making of Men events. And I would see him at different things that I would do. He'd be there. He'd be there, not because I invited him. He was there because we had a shared passion. And we have a mutual friend, Lee Rowland. And I was talking to Lee one day, and I said, when I found out Wayland was going to run for sheriff, and I said to Lee, Lee, I said, man, I don't know if I can really support Cubit. I said, because, man, he's offended me. I'm being honest with you guys right now, honest and transparent, because as a community, many of us don't work together because we've been offended, and the offense is based on an assumption. And I said, man, I don't know. I said, this guy, I said, he knows the work that I'm doing, and he never reaches out to me. I said, man, I see him reach out to everybody else in the community to come do this and do that with the FACT program, and he has never reached out to me. I was offended, y'all. Serious business. And Lee, being the mentor to both Cubit and I that he is, he said, no, Steve, no, you got the wrong guy on this one. I said, he said, I think you're reading a little more into it. He said, I encourage you to pick up the phone and have a conversation with Wayland. Wayland attests to this. I called him, and I was as blunt as I just shared this story. I was that blunt with him, and I shared with him. I said, hey man, you offended me when you did not reach out to me. And I said, man, I just thought you would have reached out to me. And let me tell you what he did. He never showed a sense of anger or anything, y'all. He said, okay, Steve, first of all, let me apologize to you that there's been a misunderstanding. He said, let me tell you why I had not reached out to you. And he explained to me all the bureaucratic red tape and then how it could possibly hinder me in what I was doing if he tried to bring me in to do things. I understand that process. And when he said that to me, I said, that makes complete sense to me. And I had to apologize to that brother. Do you hear me? He displayed that day for me. That's when I became a Wayland Cubit fan, because he showed me that day real leadership. he showed me he had the ability to set aside a guy who, and I must tell you, when I called him, the conversation was somewhat probably aggressive on my end, just to be real honest. And he was calm and he talked through that thing. And that's when I said to myself, and I told him, I said, you have my support, brother, because you are the type of leader that we need at Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department. Wayland, with that being said, your faith has to have led you to the temperament that you have. I've watched you across this community, your temperament, and to be able to deal with people in difficult situations. Talk a little bit and share with the community a little bit about your faith and how it drives you and how it keeps you calm and how it keeps you lifted up. Share with us a little bit about your process.
Yeah, man, you summed that up just perfect. And I hope that for the youngest watching this, they understand that yeah, I'm taken back by your phone call, and yes, I'm taken back by the assumptions that you get to. But I also recognize leaders in the community, and I recognize that anytime people think because I'm the face, I'm out there a lot, that I run the entire everything I run decided by me, and that's not the case. I have bosses, I have the entire city, so I have to be concerned for not just the east side, but every side of town, and the perceptions of who I'm hanging with and doing. And so we'll talk a bit about that. But my faith informs every decision I make. Now I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And in fact, during the campaign, Steve, I'll tell you that I got off track. Some things happened in the campaign, and remind me, if you ever decide to have a dog catcher in town, please sit down with me. It's tough. It's tough. I'm not a politician and being thrown into political things, and I think political is not what I do. So anyway, my opponent and his camp, they did things that really annoyed me, right? I don't know if I can get about that. But anyway, I got annoyed. Pissed is the right word. And so right after I got pissed off, a negative article about my opponent came out. And I'm like, you done slipped up now, bro. You done slipped up now. And so I took my iPhone, put up that article, and then retweeted the article with every intention of calling him hate. I mean, I didn't cause the problem. He made the mistake, and I'm just capitalizing on his mistake. I'm gonna read it to my audience, and then I got to doing that. Now check this out. My faith would not have done that. You hit the man with that. I got away from. That's not what I do. That's not what I practice, but I did, right? And then I'm riding with my wife later on night doing campaign stuff. We're down signs, we're knocking on doors, we're doing all that stuff, and she takes phone. She got one of them fancy phones. It unlocks just with her face. You know, it's just that cool like that. And they won't unlock. And I'm like, come on, I need that address. I need that address. And she's steady trying to unlock it. Wasn't unlocking. She finally had the little finger in there to unlock it. You know why I wouldn't unlock? See, it didn't unlock. It's because she had her mask on. And it was not a full version of herself, which the phone wouldn't allow her in to get access. And it made me think, dude, when I hit this send button, that tweet, that wasn't the authentic version of Wayland Cubit. That was some other dude that was kind of acting like Wayland. I need to apologize for that, right? That's not who you are. So yeah, my faith informs every decision I make, but I ain't perfect. Get off of it, right? So I didn't try to respond anymore to that and brought it up. We've had 2 debates since then. Have you heard anything about the article on now? Politics say you kick that man while he's down and you expose weaknesses. But that's not what I do. That's not what I do. And so I'm sorry for that. I'm just letting everybody know. Yes, thanks for describing me as calm, cool, blah, 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 blah. But I'm human and I'm a man. and I got caught up and was not the full version of authentic self in the moment. And it happens from time to time. It happens from time to time.
You know, but let me tell you something. That's important for me, that, and most of us, particularly fathers, who one of the things that we try to teach our sons, and one of the things I try to teach in the Making of Men program, is to always control your emotions, because there are going to be some days and some times when some people going to say some show enough mean things to you. There's some people set some traps for you, and look, you rightfully so could probably go get them and go after them. But but it's something to be said about a leader who can control their emotions, and then what you just said, admit that. That's the one thing that I'm always looking for in leadership, is when you make the mistake, or when you get out there and do some things that you realize may not have been in the best interest of everyone, that you have that ability, you have some core values that will allow you to say, you know what, I may have not, probably shouldn't have did that, or I shouldn't have said that. You did something, you said something that was so important that I constantly try to make sure I'm intentional to do. That's catch myself before I tweet and Facebook, because I realized, and a good friend of mine, Derek Booker, Nitro, he helped me understand this. He said, Steve, you got to be careful some of the stuff you say, because people are actually listening to you. He said, so you can say something with not having the intention of hurting someone or hurting their business, and you do. And guess what I do now, Cubit? So when I used to go someplace and the food was bad and the service was bad, man, I'd get on and I boop, 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 boop. I don't do that anymore, because I realized, I said, oh, wait a minute. I've got to be a good steward of the influence. I got to be a good steward of the voice. I can't go and say something and that can destroy someone's business and livelihood. That's what one of the things that matter to me, particularly in this position as sheriff. I was telling people earlier today that two of the most important positions, in my opinion, in a community, particularly the Black community, is the DA and the sheriff. There's no way you want to have someone with that lack the experience, that lack the temperament to be able to be in that position as sheriff, because that very well could lead to someone's life being totally rearranged, all based on inexperience and emotions. Share with us a little bit about why you believe the experience that you have can transfer to our community to a place that gives hope, healing, love, and belonging. Not just serve and protect, right? But also give some of those other things that the people are looking for during this time in our country. Because the truth is, our country's hurting. The Black community is hurting. People have a great mistrust for law enforcement, Wayland. So tell me, talk a little bit about how you're going to gain that trust and start to rebuild the affections that the community should have and can have for law enforcement.
Well, you touched on a whole lot of things. I should have made a list, because this is a long answer. But what we're talking about first is that I have to recognize and own this, is that the face of oppression in this country usually wore uniform like the I wear. Right? It was the law, it was this thing, but you enforce laws. It was done by a uniform or a woman in uniform. And although we're many moons away from the law per se being bad and crippling, people have long memories. And so any little justice that we do as an individual officer, even though it may not be against the law, any of those little slight injustices, it strikes the memory of the whole community, right? And then you get into the criminal justice system. And then there's all the other things inside the criminal justice system that's unfair. We have data to show that the criminal justice system has been disproportionately hard on people of color. We know that. And so what we need now is leaders that own that. first of all. So how often do you see a leader of law enforcement and say, what's up? I understand memory, understand the historical process that might come along with us showing up.
That's right.
To that. And if you get an opportunity, this experience, although it might have negative outcome, it does not have to be a negative experience. Right? That's coming from me. Second of all, how do I know that the trust that I built up in the community will transfer? I don't. I do notice that people trust me in Black brown communities with their most precious commodity, their children. They trust me with their children.
Huge.
I'm huge. Right? And what I'm saying, when we have George Floyd moments, when we go these things, I'm talking kids in prison. Steve, I go to inside of Kojak prison every week, even on campaign. I haven't missed. And so what I go, man, I think about police. Man, we hate police. We hate this. And go on. I live for this 15, 20 minutes. And I said, y'all hate me, bro? No, we don't hate you. We don't hate you. Oh, wait a minute. Everything you just said, I am. Everything you just said is what I do. And they went, well, we don't hate you. We hate police. So it's not police officers they dislike. It's policing that they dislike. And so what that tells me is if they got a chance to know us as people, as men and women, they might find something that they don't like, but they'll be able to tell you what it is they don't like about it. But for the most part, we will know who we are at an authentic personal level and be able to decide right then and there who they like and why they don't like. Those kids have come out of Steve. I can tell you right now, I can say, I want y'all to beat Steve up. No, don't do it. They will do it because they care about me and know I care about them. Right? We have a real relationship. It's because I spend time with them, I talk to them, I cry with them, I celebrated with them, I prayed with them. Now, here's what I'm not gonna do. Is give them a pass on their mistakes. You still have to be held accountable for what we do. We have to be accountable for what we do. You mess up. I'm not going to allow you to make any man to make whole community scared of him or feel unsafe. Right? And my job is not punishment of anybody. My job is protection of everybody. So if consequences to separate you from the rest of us right now, you can find out what it is you to be able to do to hang out with us without stealing, without threatening our property, doing that kind of stuff. Then that's what happens. But if we get there, I'm not leaving you there throwing away. You're not damaged goods. You're still a person. You're still a person. So just because they're in prison, I mean they're a problem. Because we need to care about them. We know this. When they go to prison or jail, Steve, what's going to happen? I think I know for a fact. They're coming back. They come back to the community. And we want them to come back whole. We want them to be able to provide. We want them to be able to flourish. We want them to be able to provide for their family. This they want to do. We want to make it possible. Right? I'm not sure if that's all of your questions and concerns, but what I'm saying, what I bring to the table is that I know for a fact my job is not punishment of anybody. My job is protection for everybody.
Wayland, as things go, sometime we have some technical difficulties with the sound, so we're not going to stop what we're doing. We're going to get you on the phone, right, Eddie? We're going to get him on the phone here so that we can fix this sound. This is kind of what we have to do. We adjust on the fly. We got to keep moving and keep it going because this is a very important conversation to have. Part of being a leader, as Wayland understands, is we don't let little bumps and barriers in the road hinder the process. And next week, come November 3rd, we have a huge decision to make. And let me say this as we kind of prepare to try to get Wayland on the telephone so we can make sure that you guys can hear him, because I want to make sure you really understand and hear what he's saying. He talked about the work that he has been doing in Kojak, and I need you to understand how important that work is, because those young men will come out. And here's what you don't want to happen. You don't want a young man to come out of Kojak, or out of incarceration, angrier than they went in. What you want to make sure that happens is some real rehabilitation. That's why it's so important to have the Wayland Cubits of the world to go into facility. Let me tell you something. Not many people are willing to do that, because that's some of the hardest work you can do. It is difficult, because when you go into these rooms, those rooms are filled with hopelessness, because I do it as well. I go down into Joseph Harp and work with those brothers down there, and to talk to these brothers who have 25, 30 years doing life in prison. And look, for drug offenses, y'all. Listen to me now. Drug offenses. It hurts your heart. And so you have to go in with a totally different mindset just to be able to feed them what they need. Wayland, let's test you right now. Say something and let's make sure we can hear you better.
Test.
That's much better.
Let me see if I can do it on speakerphone so I don't look.
Okay, that's much better. Let's try this. Bear with us, people. Bear with us.
How does that sound?
It sounds much better. So Wayland, let's talk a little bit about. I don't want us to go past what you just said. That work you've been doing in Kojak, that the effort that you have been putting in to make sure that society does not throw away our young men who may make a mistake. Listen to me, may make a mistake, but that mistake shouldn't cost them their life, right? And you've decided that going into those places and giving those young people some seeds of hope and preparing them to come out was important. Now, so let's talk about why that was important to you. But I want you to talk about it from the standpoint of your calling, right? Because I don't believe that police officers and folks in law enforcement, I don't believe that it is a career choice per se. I believe it's a calling. Just like being a teacher is a calling. I think you have to love humanity. Those police officers who I've watched abuse people, I question, do they love humanity? Because you can't put your knee on the back of a George Floyd's neck for as long as he did and love humanity and understand it's your calling. So Cubit, talk to us about how you knew this was your calling, when you knew this was your calling, and why it's so important to you to stay committed to the calling.
Well, the reality is, Steve, I got the bug for law enforcement to be a police officer when I was 12. Now, I think then I obviously thought it was something that I wanted to do, and I pursued it. You know, I'm concerned about it, do all that kind of stuff. It was only after had been in work for a little while that I realized that I was being looked at differently, that I was impacting lives, not just on a 911 call, but you can usher in hope, in hopelessness. You're talking to victims, you're talking to people that were scared, you're talking, and after years and years of doing this, right, I'm in my 20s of chasing and arresting guys in their teens. Then I got to my 30s and I was arresting guys, chasing guys in their teens. And I realized I was getting older, but the suspect was staying the same age. So listen, it reminds me, I said, okay, I'm going to work myself to death. I'm going to work myself to death if we don't stop these young people from getting into this life of crime. And then you go realize, okay, well, why are they getting into this life of crime? So what happens is, if you think about that story of that great little town that bordered a river, and the river started flooding, and somebody actually looked out the window and saw all these babies drowning in the river. So all the town people jumped out of their house and they all ran down the river and they all formed this line and they start pulling the babies out of the river. And finally, the biggest guy in town got tired of pulling babies out the river. He gets out of the water and starts walking up the river. The town goes, wait a minute, what are you doing? You giving up? I thought we were trying to save these babies. He said, I am. I'm going upstream to find out how these babies get in the river. Right? Somebody
That's
in this
good.
town
That's
has
good.
got to go upstream.
Upstream.
And figure out
That's
how
good.
these babies get in this river. Right? So when I go to Kojak, I'm going there to make sure they don't fall back in. Right? When you go to Joseph Harp and you're dealing with those brothers and those sisters, all of them, you're saying you in the water, but we're trying to make sure you don't fall back in. We want to stop the drowning where it starts.
Woo. Woo. Hey, brother, listen here. That said it all. Now, and it's the perfect transition to my next question for you, because I wanted to ask you, what's your vision for the sheriff's department? And you just talked about going up the river, right? To keep folks from going back into the water. So you have the potential right now. There's the possibility that you'll be the first black sheriff in Oklahoma County, and that's significant. But and I agree with you. You are the sheriff for all people. That's significant. But you're also a black man, and that matters, right? It matters because our boys and our girls are seeing someone in authority that they can look up to, that they can dream of being, that we can begin to change the paradigm about blacks being in law enforcement. So share your vision for the sheriff's department. How, as the sheriff of this department, you plan to go upriver to save the people?
Right. So this is, I mean, you're way up in my head right now, and I don't even think people can really understand what I see when I see that the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department will be the premier agency for community policing in the world. Did you catch what I said?
In the world, I heard you.
I didn't say in the state.
I heard you.
I didn't say in the nation. I said in the world. This is when members of our community are saying, they're saying that that's our agency.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
They're talking about that's us. It's not them and it's not us. It's all of us
that's
together.
Good.
It's when people are participating in their own rescue.
That's good.
Right? But one of the things that's pretty frustrating as a young police officer is you go to a tragic scene and a car wreck per se, and people are trapped. And as a first responder, I get the fire department, and I get the tools, I get other officers, I get the crane, jaws of life. We do all that kind of stuff. And I reach down into this mess of a wreck, and I go, ma'am, hand me your hand. All you got to do is hand me your hand. We're going to pull you up. We got it all propped up. We got everything put together. Everything. All you got to do is give me your hand. And go, I'm scared. Are you going to drop me? I'm hurt. I'm doing all that kind of stuff. I said, this is very frustrating. It's very frustrating. I've done all these things, and you, ma'am, are not participating in your own rescue. This bothers me, and expand that out is like, we calling the police when all we need to do is call our neighbors, right? We bringing tools to the game that we don't necessarily need. That's because neighbors don't trust neighbors.
Right.
But
wait. Let me interrupt you, Wayland. Let me interrupt you. But do you understand why we're scared? Do you understand why we fear that even when you come and you look like me, but you got that uniform on, and you keep saying, I got you, come on. And I'm like, I do need you, but that uniform hadn't been good to me.
What I'm saying, Steve, is I understand that. But I'm also not understanding. I get to these calls sometimes and I'll go, this is an easy fix if the neighbor would have just came over and assisted you. You don't need the police for this. Right? I know a church down the street that loves to help people in your situation. I know Steve, 2 doors down, who does this kind of stuff every day.
Every day. That's wow. That's good.
Every day. I was just at Steve's house taking a burglary report, and he was sitting there with bicycles in his drive, and he fixed bicycles for a living. And your son over here stealing bicycles because he's trying to get to work.
Wow.
Now I'm over here investigating the bike theft when you and Steve could talk together, and you could have been. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Listen, that dude up in Atlanta that got shot, that caused all that ran from the police, and they grabbed the taser and they ended up shooting him in the back and all that melee and all that stuff up there. And people were asking me, should they have shot him? Were they in the right? Well, he shouldn't have run on the other side. You know, all this controversy. You know what? I went upstream on that situation, and I said, who adults that have never seen a man fall asleep in the drive-thru? It's two things wrong. He's drunk or he's sick.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody went and tapped on that window and said, man, can we help you?
Uh-huh.
They called the police first. They called the police first. Now that's one problem. But what if they needed to call the police? What if they needed to call the police and everybody trusted the police? Maybe he wouldn't have felt like he had to run if he thought he was going to get a fair deal. So we have a lot of work to do within our neighborhood, with each other, and within our neighborhood with the police. We have to know each other. I think it's real. You know what they tell us to do in the police academy, my very first police academy? They said if somebody ever gets your gun, if a bad guy ever gets your gun and tells you to get on your knees, and he tells you to don't look at him, you better make sure you look at him. I can understand why. I don't want to see him shoot me. They said because it's really, really hard to look a man in his face and shoot him. That's why they always make it. And what I mean is, you said they can't do it, right? So what they're saying is, if they know you, they can't damage you. It's hard to.
So let's.
I'm saying is, right. Brutality is hard to do to somebody you connect with.
So Wayland, you're leading me to the next question, because that's an issue. So what I just heard you talk about, what you just shared was a vision for community policing. What you said is we have to start re-engaging the community to start taking care of themselves and each other, and only call us when it's just like a dire need. So let me ask you this question. How do you get the community to start leaning on each other, right? How do you get the community to start working together with each other so that they understand, hey, look, guys, we are our first line of defense, not the police. How do you, as a law enforcement person, engage the community people to get them to do that?
We're doing it on small scales all over the city. The things that you do, right, when you bring police to your event, and they're engaging with kids become an authentic relationship with officers. Officers are going to their ball games when it's not in uniform. When they're at their ball game, they go, right. Ooh, that's Officer so-and-so. They meet mama and grandma. It's organic. It's organic. I have officers right now that are going to baby showers.
That's good.
Graduation.
That's good.
They're doing all of that stuff. I'm getting phone calls on weekends and Saturdays and Sundays. Not just me. Every officer that ever worked for me is getting those same phone calls. And so we're community. So we're using our resources together. It's a slow process, but when I say to a deputy that works for me in 2021, and I said, you just arrested Steve for some minor offense, but whatever it is, you had to arrest him, and you had to impound his car. What did you go back to his family and explain to them why you had to arrest Steve and why you had to impound the car? And then was there anything Steve was expected to do in the next 2 or 3 days that you might have access to a resource to fill in the gap while Steve is trying to figure that out? Do we do that now? That's community policing.
That's community policing.
Here's the conversation.
That's good. That's community
Here's
policing.
the conversation hypothetically. Ma'am, I had to arrest Steve last night. You know, he was, I don't know if he was having a mental health episode or not, but he was tearing up some things at his buddy's house and it was a trespassing thing, and I had to impound his car. But I noticed there was some property in the car. Does any of that belong to your kids that made you get online
Wow.
Monday?
That's good. That's good.
Because I can go get that stuff and bring it to you, right? Was he supposed to, that money, he had a whole bunch of money in his pocket that we put in. Was that for bill money or anything like that you got to pay, you know, all that kind of stuff? Because I know when my wife is planning a 3-day trip, even though we plan it, those 3 days, my life is in chaos because she is significant in my family. She has a roles and responsibilities in my family. And so automatically when we take someone out, well, for whatever reason, it might be a good reason, it might be against the law. But what does the family have to do with that?
You know, Wayland, what you're talking about is refreshing to hear, because many times when I hear police and politicians and people talk about, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do, I always ask, okay, I hear you saying what you're going to do. How are you going to do that? Because that's what most people really want to understand, and that's what the average citizen really don't understand, is how do we make those things happen? The narrative you just shared, it helps. And for those politicians who are watching, what you just heard Wayland do is share a narrative in a way that people can understand. Oh, that's what community policing looks like. Oh, so when Steve is doing things, bringing the police to watch a movie at Halloween and do Halloween and giving books and candy and all that with the police, that's community policing. That's how we that's how we build partnerships with people in the community, is the people don't wait for the police department to reach out to them. Community people reach out to the police departments and say, hey, can we do this together? Hey, have you considered trying this? So I have a question here from your good friend, Warren P. He asked the question, who specifically in the community will you work with to continue to listen to this, Wayne? Because this is important, because I've been wondering this about what you've been doing, because we got to keep doing what you've been doing with the FACT program. So how do you scale that up now? How do you scale that up with the city and the county sheriff's department? Because let me tell you something, if you can scale that thing up, and you can make those and allow those two and encourage those two organizations to work together, let me tell you something, you sincerely will change the world, because you're going to interrupt the mass incarceration machine.
Yeah. We have to look at, right, specifically where we at. There's some infrastructure things that we have to do as an agency, right? Let's not forget that we do have very core things that you have to do at the sheriff's department. There's still 911 calls, there's still that kind of stuff. And so this community policing machine that we're going to build is going to be not changing a culture, it's building a culture. So we have to do some foundational things first, right? That's internal. That's the men and women. Remember, when we came up through law enforcement, Steve, it wasn't said this way, but if I was to characterize the mentality was a warrior mentality. What we're moving into is a guardian mentality, right? We're not going to be warriors of the city. We want to be guardians in the community, right?
Yeah,
so
I like that.
That's
Guardian.
a mindset.
I like that.
That's a mindset that we have to do internally. That's how we see ourselves first. And so as we begin to see ourselves as guardians, and now this leader, this sheriff is saying, okay, now guardian, how do we go out and protect our community? How do we go upstream on every call? That means that the first mile is what we're required to do. What does it look like the second mile? What's the other stuff that we're not required to do that might help that family thrive, flourish, exist, and communicate and cooperate with not just the police, but other neighbors and other communities and other organizations, other faith-based organizations, other nonprofits? How do you, as a community member, contribute to the thriving and flourishing of all of us?
So let me ask you this, and neither of us are naive to this. Institutionalized racism is real. In that sheriff's department, without a doubt, you have some racist cops there. You have a system that was built on institutionalized racism. So when you start talking about getting these folks to go the extra mile and to care, you can't legislate one's heart, right? So how then, as sheriff, as a black man going in, and you clearly see some racist behavior, you're clearly working inside a institution that has for generations been very unkind to black people and people of color. How do you deal with those deputies and those people that are part of that department? Because you can't do any of the things you're talking about doing, Wayland, because you just talked about it, some of the things you're going to do. But if you have folks whose hearts are not right, who's working against you, I mean, how are you going to handle that? I mean, you do training around biases in policing and so forth. But then when you step into that leadership role, the game really changes. So what do you do then? How are you going to handle that? Will you immediately get rid of these people? I mean, help us understand that.
Well, that's what I'm correct with. The game is not going to change. The game is going to be the same for Wayland Cubit. I hold myself accountable. I hold my people that work for me now accountable. I even hold the volunteers that work with us accountable, and that will not change as sheriff. So we have policies and stuff, but you're right. You can't really legislate the heart. You really can't legislate the heart. And then here's some of the things that and I got to tell you the story because you have to sit down with this man at some point. You need to have him on your show. But there was a captain who retired from the Oklahoma City Police Department in 1997. That was before I came on. In 1962, at the Oklahoma City Police Department, black police officer. At that time, black officers could only ride the east side of town. They couldn't do policing all over town. The white officers could police anywhere they wanted to. Well, then they rode two-man units. So there'd be a black officer and a black officer riding on the east side, and a white officer riding wherever they wanted to ride. Knocked on his door and talked to him, and he was happy to be able to support what could be the first black sheriff. He was excited. And he said, "Let me tell you, I made history in this town." I said, "How?" He said, "I made history in this town because in the 70s, they decided to integrate our patrol cars. I was the first black officer to ever have a white partner in the same car." I said, "Oh man, you got to tell me about this. You got to tell me about this." He said, "Oh, it was in Jet magazine. It made national news in the 70s, Steve." And so he says this. He said, "I had to teach that guy a lot." I said, "What you mean you had to teach?" He said, "I had to teach that white man a lot." I said, "What do you mean you had to teach him?" He said, "I had to teach him because he had to ride the east side because I was not allowed to ride anywhere else." And so we was in the car and we saw this group of black men sitting underneath the tree, and we decided we was going to go check them out. And I asked him before we arrived, I said, "What do you think those black men are doing?" He said, "I'm not sure. We're going to find out when we get up there." He said, "No, I already know what they're doing." He said, "They're playing dominoes." He said, "Really?" He said, "Why do you think they're playing dominoes outside and not in that house?" He said, "Well, I don't know. They should be playing dominoes in the house." He said, "No, they're playing dominoes underneath that tree. It's because there's no air conditioning in the house, right? They're playing out there under the tree because it's cooler outside than it is inside." He said, "Now we can go check them out." He said, "But when we walk up there, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's gonna be a couple of them hide this little bottle underneath that tree, up underneath that chair. We're gonna notice it and everything, but we're gonna ignore it." And the white man says, "Well, why are we gonna ignore it?" He said, "We're going to ignore it because they're not doing anything different than you do up at Sea Island, or when you go to the lake, or up in Nichols Hills at your country club. So you sit down and play cards with your buddies, right? Yeah. And you have a drink, right? Yeah." He says, but you have air conditioning, and that's what they're doing. So we're going to walk up there, and we're not going to treat those people any different than we would treat you if we walked up to you at the lake when you were sitting down underneath the tree with your buddies." He said, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I'll tell you that whole story is because that white man didn't have the cultural understanding on the east side, he would have criminalized everybody underneath the tree, right? They would have promoted this guy They would have promoted this guy. He would have been in charge of creating policy.
My.
He would have been in charge of making rules. He would have been promoted all the way through the ranks without that cultural understanding. And he could have, without the heart of racism, could have been pushing the racism card right down the road. But it was relationship that actually helped him understand that he was blinded to the culture and didn't have that understanding. And so as sheriff, what I'm going to do, because I have perspective, right? I can't lay down who I am and what I know because I'm the sheriff. I have to share who I am and what I know, and everybody else has to get in line with that culture. They have to understand it. I know what it is like underneath that shade tree, and I know what it's like in air conditioning.
So let me ask you this on this point then. With that said, you said that well. What will your support team look like? Will you create a community cabinet that will advise you in the beginning and not wait for some tragedy to happen to bring people to the table? Will you be proactive and put together a community cabinet of community people? And I'm not just talking about the usual suspects of names that people always want to go get certain pastors and all of that, but I'm talking about the real community folks, and even putting together youth councils for your to advise you in your position as sheriff. Is what will your support system look like? What is some of the things you plan to do to be proactive in making sure that some tragedies don't have to happen?
Well, there's a citizen advisory board that exists now, right? They already have a citizen advisory board, and I don't know what their terms are and how they were selected. Obviously, that would have been before me. But I'm like you, Steve. I see these citizen advisory boards and I see these councils and that kind of stuff, and they do a good job of attempting to make it diverse. Attempting, they don't always get it, but because I have relationships, I want to bring those relationships with me. What's usually missing from these tables is Day and Jose.
That's right.
Just a regular.
That's right. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that's what's usually missing, and so we have to figure out a way. But also too, this is difficult. Is that these advisory committees are done on your spare time, and you don't get paid for them. So asking Day and Jose to serve because they have jobs and they need to be there, right? And we're not paying people to be on the board, so we might be doing them a disservice, asking them to take off to come to the regular monthly meeting, right? That kind of thing. So the makeup of these boards are not always just because we're trying to exclude folks. It's because some folks are not capable of meeting the criteria and the requirements to be able to serve in that capacity. And so we just got to rethink. We got to reimagine how we do it. We have Zoom now. There might be some different ways of doing this and getting this done.
So we're going to come up on the end of this, and I kind of want to, one of the things, I know what you're feeling right now because I've ran for office. And so I understand the anxieties right now. This is fourth quarter. This is the last leg. The emotions are high. The sleep is less. Tell me, what are you doing to maintain a sense of calmness? A sense of peace. How are you handling this last leg?
Man, I call it the first time in my life I've ever had mood swings.
Oh, I know, brother. I've been there.
Yeah, the first time I ever had mood swings is I feel like I like to work hard, so I feel like I ought to be knocking on doors, I ought to be talking to people. Did I raise enough money? Have I made enough impact? Am I resonating with everybody in the county? These type of things. So I feel very, very confident on one end, and then completely crazy on the other end, like I'm not doing enough. These type of things. But I'm sleeping so well at night, Steve, because I got the call in my gut, in my stomach, in my spirit that I'm supposed to run for this office. The feeling that I got was I wasn't necessarily gave the message in my gut, my spirit that I was supposed to be sheriff. that my obedience was I'm supposed to run for the office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not God wants me in that capacity, we'll find out in a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I'm doing the right thing by running for the office. I know I'm supposed to be meeting all the people I met. I know I'm supposed to be sharing this message with you right now. I know I'm supposed to be that authentic self. I know I'm supposed to care about people. I'm supposed to love people unconditionally. These three things that I have to do every single day is I have to add value to every place I go. Everywhere I go, I need to be looking for ways to add value. Number two, I have to believe in what people can become. I know that what I'm looking at right now, Steve, you're a great guy, but I know right now you are becoming a better version of yourself every single day. I see you post books that you're reading. I see that you're talking to people. I know that you're trying to get mentored. I know that you're looking for correction. I know so right now, even though, man, you're a good dude, but I know that I have to believe you can be better.
Mm-hmm.
And I treat that better, Steve, not the one I'm looking at right now. Right. And then the third is love people, period. Because if I love you, period, Steve, then it doesn't matter tomorrow when you disappoint me or when you let me down or you fail me, it will not impact the way I treat you. Right? I love you, period. When you call me that day and shock me with those statements, I defaulted very quickly to number 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whoa. How? Wait a minute. Wait. I love this man. I love this man, period. So if I love him, then we need to try to understand. I need to do my best to be able to communicate, period.
And wait, let me tell you something. That day helped me and grew me as a man because, and I want to say this to the people as we come to a close, one of the most important things that you can do as we can do as people, and particularly as men and as black men, is be willing to hear and forgive each other. Wayland said something to me that day. He said it just now. He said, brother, I love you. He said, brother, I believe in you. I love what you do. I appreciate you. So let me tell you something. When he, as another black man saying to me, as a black man, when he said that to me, my defenses immediately came down. Because he said something that I believe that I tell teachers all the time. You can teach any student, black, white, or whatever, if you love them. The key is love. You just said it, Wayland. You just said the key, because we can't legislate those police officers' heart. But what we can do is make sure that the atmosphere, and it starts at the top, that there's the atmosphere of love that's there. And that starts with leadership. So to hear you say as a man, and let me know that you're not afraid to say to another man, I love you. And hey, man, how do we fix this and work through this? That's key. And that's how the healing takes place in our city. That's how we interrupt generational chains of poverty. And that's how we give hope to black boys. And so I want to say to you, first of all, thank you for having the courage to run, because you just said something. And I'm glad you said that, because God told me to run as well. But when I lost that night, when I was so mad at God, God checked me. He said, I told you to run, not that you'd win. Because the lesson was not in the winning, the lesson was in running. The lesson was in the process. And he helped me understand, no, Steve, I never intended you to win the seat. I needed to prepare you for purpose. And that's what I've been watching you do over the years as you've been running. And I think about you all the time, because I know that you just said it. We don't know. We know we were obedient. You were obedient. And he said, run, you did that. But like you said, now I don't know what the end looks like. But here's what you do know, Wayland. You better. You just said it to me. You said, Steve, you getting better every day. And it was because I ran and lost that I'm better today, that I processed that pain. It's because you have had the courage as a black man to run, that this city, that this community is going to be better. I don't care what happens on November the 3rd, Wayland, it will be better. And if by chance it's in the cards for God to put sheriff by your name, we gonna even be better than that. because I believe in the love that you have for people. I believe in your sincerity and your calling. And I want to encourage the people out there right now to take this time to really process where we are as a state, as a country. And I want you to think about what type of leadership we need in this season. In this season, we need a leader who's experienced. We need a leader who's not afraid to say I'm wrong. We need a leader who can say I love you. We need a leader that have core values that we can stand on, that all people are important. Wayland, I'm gonna give you the last words, my friend. Go ahead and close us out.
No, I think you did a wonderful job. I appreciate your platform. I appreciate what you're always trying to do. You're being authentic. Thank you for staying involved with young men. Period. I appreciate that. I know firsthand what it takes. I know firsthand what it takes. I know that you celebrate with them, but I also know there's phone calls that we don't talk about that is not so celebratory. I get that. And so from one guy to another guy who's just trying to help other guys out. And I appreciate you, and thanks for having me on. And here's one thing that I can tell you that's going to happen on November the 4th. I'm going to do what I've always been doing.
That's right.
Is serve others. That's it.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey guys, Wayland, brother, here's what I'll say to you, my friends. You've got my vote on November 3rd. And anybody who listens and watch this, I want to encourage you to do the same, to vote for Wayland Cubit. I believe that he can lead our community in this season. And I believe that he is what our young Black boys and Black girls need to see. Hey, my friends, as always, serve, care, and love. Enjoy the rest of your day.